Welcome back, guys. 80% of you still haven't subscribed. Before we start the video, hit that subscribe button. It only takes a second. You're not on a mission to hunt monsters in the army. You're expecting drills, missions, and maybe even combat in a desert on the other side of the world. You're not expecting to stand in a briefing room deep in the Appalachian Mountains, staring at a map covered in red X marks showing where each soldier disappeared without a trace. But there I was, Private Ryan Carter, 3 months out of basic, stationed at Forward Operating Base Kettleman, tucked so far into the Virginia backwoods that our GPS coordinates weren't even on most civilian maps. The base was small, maybe 200 people, built decades ago for reasons nobody talked about. Cold War leftover, some said. Others whispered it was something else. Something the government wanted eyes on but couldn't admit existed. I didn't believe any of it. Not at first. The briefing room smelled like old coffee and mildew. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across Colonel Jonathan Price's face as he stood at the front, arms crossed, jaw set like granite. He was the kind of officer who didn't waste words. Every word carried weight. "Gentlemen," he began, voice clipped and sharp. "Over the past 6 weeks, we've had 4 soldiers go missing during routine patrols. No bodies recovered, no distress signals, no evidence of foul play. Just gone." He tapped the map behind him. 4 red X's scattered across the northern ridgeline, each one circled in black marker. "Local wildlife?" someone asked from the back. Price's eyes narrowed. "If it were wildlife, we'd find remains. Bears leave tracks. Cougars leave blood. We found nothing. Not a boot print. Not a shell casing. Not a scrap of uniform." The room went quiet. I shifted in my seat, pulse picking up. Beside me, Specialist Marcus Henderson, call sign Mac, sat stone-faced, arms folded. He was a lifer, 10 years in, seeing action in Iraq and Afghanistan. Nothing rattled him, but even he looked tense. "Tonight," Price continued, "we're sending a patrol into Sector 7. 3-man team. You'll sweep the northern perimeter, check in every 30 minutes, and return by 0400. If you see anything at all that doesn't belong, you report it immediately. Do not engage. Do not investigate alone. Am I clear?" A chorus of "yes, sir" echoed through the room. Price's gaze landed on me. "Carter, you're on point with Henderson and Flores. Gear up and move out at 2100. My stomach dropped. Point. First patrol into the same woods where 4 men had disappeared. Mac clapped a hand on my shoulder as we filed out. "Relax, kid. It's just a walk in the woods." But his grip was tight. Too tight. By 2030, we were geared up in the armory. Standard loadout. M4 carbines, sidearms, night vision, GPS trackers, emergency flares, and enough ammo to hold off a small army. Danny Flores, a wiry kid from Texas with a grin that never quit, checked his rifle for the 3rd time. "You all think it's true?" he asked, voice low. "About the thing in the woods?" "What thing?" I asked, adjusting my vest. Danny leaned in, eyes wide with mock seriousness. "Bigfoot, man. Sasquatch. The local legends say these mountains are crawling with them. Tall as a tree, strong enough to snap a man in half." Mac rolled his eyes. "Shut it, Flores. You sound like a tourist." "I'm serious," Danny insisted. "My grandma grew up near here. She used to tell stories about hunters going missing, finding giant footprints, hearing screams in the night that didn't sound like any animal." "Your grandma also believed Elvis was still alive," Mac muttered, slinging his rifle. "Focus on the mission, not fairy tales." But I noticed Mac's hand lingered on his sidearm longer than usual. And when he thought no one was looking, his eyes flicked toward the windows, toward the dark tree-line pressing against the base perimeter. The woods were waiting. We stepped into the night at 9 p.m. sharp. The air was thick, humid, clinging to my skin like a wet blanket. Crickets chirped in the distance, but the sound felt muted, swallowed by the sheer density of the forest. Trees loomed overhead, their branches twisting into shapes that looked almost deliberate, like claws reaching down. Mac took point, his night vision goggles glowing faint green in the dark. I followed close, rifle up, scanning left and right. Danny brought up the rear, his usual chatter replaced by tense silence. The trail was narrow, barely wide enough for single file. Roots jutted up from the ground, threatening to trip us with every step. Fog crept along the forest floor, curling around our boots like living smoke. 30 minutes in, Mac raised a fist. We stopped. He pointed ahead. Through the trees, something glinted in the moonlight. Metal. I crept forward, heart hammering, and found it. A dog tag, half buried in the dirt. Mac picked it up, wiping away the mud. His jaw tightened. "Corporal Stevens," he said quietly. "Disappeared 3 weeks ago." I scanned the area. No other signs. No blood. No torn fabric. No struggle. Just a single dog tag lying in the middle of nowhere. Danny crossed himself. "This is bad, man. This is really bad." Mac keyed his radio. "Base, this is Echo 3. We found evidence of Corporal Stevens at grid reference 4723. Continuing sweep." Static crackled back. Then a voice, clipped, intense. "Copy, Echo 3. Proceed with caution." We moved deeper into the woods. The fog thickened, cutting visibility to 20 meters. Every shadow looked wrong. Every rustle of leaves made my trigger finger itch. Then we heard it. A sound, low, guttural, echoing through the trees. Not a bear, not a cougar. Something else. Something that made every hair on my body stand on end. It was a growl. Deep, resonant, vibrating through the ground beneath our feet. And it was close. Mac's hand went up again. We froze. Rifles raised, breaths shallow. The growl came again, closer this time, followed by the crack of branches snapping like toothpicks. "Mac!" Danny whispered, voice shaking. "Tell me that's a bear." Mac didn't answer. His eyes were locked on the treeline ahead, night vision scanning, finger resting on his trigger guard. The growl stopped. Silence pressed in, so thick it felt like suffocation. Then, through the fog, I saw it. A shape, massive, tall, moving between the trees with a slow, deliberate gait. Not on 4 legs. On 2. My blood ran cold. It stopped, turned, and even through the fog, even in the dark, I swear I saw eyes, yellow, glowing, staring straight at us. Danny's breath hitched. "Holy crap! Holy crap!" "Quiet!" Mac hissed. The thing tilted its head like it was studying us. Then it moved fast, too fast for something that size. It vanished into the trees, leaving only the sound of crashing foliage and a low, rumbling growl that faded into the distance. We stood frozen for what felt like hours. Finally, Mac lowered his rifle. "We're calling this in," he said, voice tight. "Now." He keyed the radio. "Base, this is Echo 3. We've got visual contact with an unidentified entity. Requesting immediate extraction." Static. "Base, do you copy?" More static. Then a faint voice, distorted and breaking up. "Echo 3, negative on proceed mission." The radio died. Danny's voice cracked. "We're on our own." Mac cursed under his breath, trying to cycle frequencies. Nothing. Just dead air. I scanned the woods, pulse racing. The fog had thickened even more, swallowing the trees, turning the forest into a maze of shadows. "We move," Mac said, slinging his rifle. "Back to base. Double time." We turned and started back down the trail, but something was wrong. The path looked different. Trees that should have been on our left were now on our right. Landmarks we'd passed were gone. "Mac," I said, voice tight, "are we going the right way?" He checked his GPS. The screen flickered, then went dark. "Dang it," he muttered, shaking it. "Dead." Battery was full when we left. Danny pulled out his own GPS, same thing. Dead screen. "This doesn't make sense," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "All 3 units can't just die." "They can if something's interfering," Mac said grimly. He looked around, scanning the fog. "We navigate by landmarks. Stay close. Stay sharp." We moved in tight formation, every step measured. The fog pressed closer, thick enough to taste. My breath came fast, shallow. I kept my rifle up, finger hovering over the trigger. Then we heard it again, the growl. But this time it wasn't ahead of us. It was behind us, and to the left, and to the right. They're surrounding us, Danny whispered, voice shaking. Keep moving, Mac ordered. Don't stop. Don't look back. But I couldn't help it. I glanced over my shoulder and through the fog. I saw shapes. Multiple shapes. Tall, hulking figures moving between the trees, keeping pace with us, staying just out of clear sight. My heart hammered so hard I thought it would burst. Mac, I said, voice cracking. There's more than one. He didn't answer, just picked up the pace. We broke into a jog, then a run, crashing through underbrush, branches tearing at our uniforms. The growls followed, growing louder, closer, echoing from every direction. Then Danny screamed. I spun around. He was gone. Just gone. 1 second he was behind me. The next, nothing but empty trail and swirling fog. Danny! I shouted, rifle sweeping. Danny, where are you? No answer. Just silence. And then, faint and distant, a scream, high-pitched, full of terror, cutting off abruptly. Mac grabbed my arm, yanking me forward. Move! Now! We ran, full sprint, lungs burning, legs pumping. The fog opened ahead, revealing a small clearing bathed in pale moonlight. We burst into it, gasping, rifles raised. The clearing was empty. No trees, no underbrush, just flat ground covered in moss. And in the center, sitting perfectly upright, was Danny's rifle. Mac approached it slowly, scanning the treeline. He picked up the rifle. It was warm, freshly dropped. Danny, he called out. Flores, if you can hear me, sound off. Silence. Then from the trees came a sound. Not a growl, not a scream. A voice. Help me. It was Danny's voice, weak, strained, coming from the darkness beyond the clearing. I took a step forward, but Mac grabbed my shoulder, holding me back. That's not him, he said, voice cold. What do you mean? I whispered. That's his voice. Listen to it, Mac hissed. Really listen. I did, and my blood turned to ice. The voice was Danny's, but it was wrong. Too slow, too measured, like someone mimicking him, playing back a recording. Help me, please. It's a trap, Mac said. Move, now. We backed away from the clearing, rifles trained on the treeline. The voice called out again, louder this time, more insistent. Ryan, Mac, don't leave me. My hands shook. Every instinct screamed at me to run into those trees, to find Danny, to help him. But Mac's grip on my shoulder kept me grounded. He's gone, kid, Mac said quietly. If we go in there, we're gone too. Tears stung my eyes, but I nodded. We backed out of the clearing, moving fast, leaving Danny's rifle behind. The voice followed us into the woods, calling our names over and over, growing more desperate, more human, until it didn't sound like a trap anymore. Sounded real. But we didn't stop. We couldn't, because deep in the fog, we heard footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, coming closer. And somewhere in the dark, something growled. We ran until our lungs burned, until our legs turned to lead, until the fog thinned enough to see the base lights glowing through the trees. When we finally burst through the perimeter fence, guards raised their rifles before recognizing us. Stand down, one of them shouted. It's Henderson and Carter. We collapsed just inside the gate, gasping, covered in dirt and sweat. Blood ran from scratches on my face where branches had torn skin. Mac's uniform was shredded at the shoulder. Within minutes, we were surrounded. Medics checked us over while Colonel Price pushed through the crowd, his face carved from stone. Report, he barked. Mac stood, chest still heaving. Sir, we encountered multiple hostiles in Sector 7. Specialist Flores is missing. Presumed captured or killed. Our communications and GPS equipment failed simultaneously. We were tracked, hunted, and nearly ambushed. Price's jaw tightened. Hostiles. Describe them. Mac hesitated. I saw the war behind his eyes. The part of him that wanted to sound rational, professional. But we'd both seen what we'd seen. Large, bipedal creatures, sir. 8 to 9 feet tall, moving with intelligence and coordination. They used vocal mimicry to lure us into a trap. The crowd went silent. Someone coughed. Another soldier muttered something under his breath. Price's eyes narrowed. "You're telling me you encountered Bigfoot?" "I'm telling you we encountered something that shouldn't exist," Max said, voice hard. "And it took one of our men." Price stared at him for a long moment. Then he turned to the medics. "Get them cleaned up and debriefed. No one leaves this room until I say so." He looked back at us. "And, gentlemen, what you saw out there doesn't leave this base. Are we clear?" "Sir," I started. "We need to send a search party for Danny. He might still be." "Flores is gone, Private." Price cut me off, voice like ice. "Just like the others. We don't send good men after ghosts." Anger flared in my chest. "He's not a ghost. He's out there, and those things have him." Price stepped closer, his presence crushing. "You want to go back out there, Carter? You want to walk into those woods at night, following voices that sound like your friends, and end up just another red X on my map?" I opened my mouth, but no words came. "That's what I thought," Price said coldly. He turned to the guards. "No one goes beyond the fence tonight. Post double watch. Shoot anything that moves in the tree-line." As he walked away, Mac grabbed my arm. "Let it go, kid. How can you just—" "Because he's right," Mac said quietly. "Danny's gone. And if we go back, we're dead too." They kept us in the debriefing room for 3 hours. 2 intelligence officers I'd never seen before asked the same questions over and over. "What did you see? What did it look like? How many were there? Could you have been mistaken?" I told them everything. The shapes in the fog, the glowing eyes, the voice mimicry, the way they moved with purpose, with strategy. The officers took notes, faces blank, revealing nothing. When they finally let us go, it was past 3 a.m. I stumbled to my bunk, every muscle screaming. But when I closed my eyes, all I saw were those yellow eyes staring at me through the fog. All I heard was Danny's voice calling for help. I didn't sleep. At 6 a.m., reveille blared through the barracks. I dragged myself out of bed, body aching, mind foggy. In the mess hall, soldiers whispered over breakfast. Word had spread despite Price's orders. Everyone knew Flores was gone. Everyone knew something was out there. Mac found me, picking at scrambled eggs I couldn't taste. He sat down across from me, tray loaded with food he wouldn't eat either. "Colonel wants to see us," he said. 0730. His office. "What for?" "Didn't say." Mac's eyes were bloodshot, ringed with dark circles. "But I got a bad feeling." At 7:30, we stood outside Price's office. The door was solid oak, old and heavy. Through it, we could hear muffled voices, an argument, then silence. The door opened. Price stood there, uniform crisp despite the early hour. "Get in." Inside, the office was Spartan, a desk, filing cabinets, a map of the region on the wall. And sitting in the corner was a woman in civilian clothes. 40s, maybe 50s, with sharp eyes and a briefcase on her lap. "This is Dr. Sarah Kimball," Price said. "She's with a government research division. She has questions." Dr. Kimball stood, extending a hand. "Gentlemen, I've read your debrief. I need you to understand something. What you encountered last night has been documented in this region for decades." My stomach dropped. "Documented? The military has known about these entities since the 1960s, she continued, pulling files from her briefcase. "Primarily in the Pacific Northwest, but populations exist here in Appalachia as well. This base was established specifically to monitor and contain sightings." Mac's face went hard. "Contain?" "Yes," Dr. Kimball said simply. "The creatures are territorial but generally reclusive. They avoid human contact unless provoked or unless humans venture too deep into their territory. Unfortunately, recent logging operations to the north have disrupted their migration patterns. They're moving closer to the base." "And the missing soldiers?" I asked, voice shaking. Dr. Kimball's expression didn't change. "Casualties of proximity. The creatures see us as threats. They defend their territory aggressively. They took Danny alive, I said. We heard him. No, she corrected. You heard something mimicking him. It's a documented behavior. They study human speech patterns, replicate them to confuse and disorient. It's quite sophisticated. I felt sick. So Danny's dead. Most likely within the first few minutes of capture, Dr. Kimball said clinically. They're not known to keep prisoners. The room spun. I gripped the edge of Price's desk to steady myself. Here's the situation, Price said, taking over. We can't evacuate the base without drawing attention. We can't go public without causing mass panic. So we adapt. New protocols. No patrols beyond the fence after dark. No solo operations. And if you encounter one of these things, you do not engage. You retreat immediately. You're asking us to just hide, Max said, voice low and dangerous. Let them own the woods while we cower behind a fence. I'm asking you to survive, Price shot back. Because the alternative is ending up like Flores. Dr. Kimball closed her briefcase. Gentlemen, I know this is difficult, but these creatures are apex predators. They're stronger, faster, and more intelligent than any animal you've ever encountered. Your best chance is avoidance. She moved toward the door, then paused. One more thing. If you see one during the day, don't run. They interpret retreat as prey behavior. Stand your ground, make noise, and back away slowly. Running triggers their chase instinct. And at night? I asked. Her eyes met mine, cold and clinical. At night, Private, you pray you don't see one at all. For 2 days, the base held its breath. Patrols stayed within sight of the fence. Guards doubled on every shift. Floodlights blazed through the night, pushing back the darkness. But on the third night, the power went out. I was in the mess hall when the lights died. 1 second, fluorescent brightness. The next, total darkness. Emergency generators kicked in after 30 seconds, bathing everything in dim red light. Alarms blared. Soldiers scrambled. Through the windows, I saw the fence line. The floodlights were dead. Beyond them, the forest pressed close, a wall of impenetrable black. All personnel to defensive positions, someone shouted. I grabbed my rifle and ran outside. The scene was chaos. Soldiers taking positions along the fence, officers barking orders, searchlights sweeping the treeline. Mac found me, rifle in hand. They cut the power. What? The generators aren't malfunctioning, he said grimly. Something ripped through the power cables. Cut them clean. My blood ran cold. They're that smart. Smarter. Mac chambered around. They're coming. As if on cue, the howls began. Deep, resonant, echoing from every direction. Not wolves. Not bears. Something else. Something that made every primal instinct in my body scream to run. Then we saw them, shapes emerging from the treeline. Tall, massive, moving with deliberate slowness. 5, 10, 20. More. Their eyes glowed in the searchlights, reflecting yellow-green like animals caught in headlights. Hold your fire. Price's voice boomed. No one shoots unless they breach the fence. The creatures stopped just outside the fence line, watching, studying. One of them stepped forward, massive shoulders rolling with each movement. It stood at least 9 feet tall, covered in dark, matted fur. Its face was almost human, broad and flat, with intelligent eyes that scanned our positions with unsettling focus. It opened its mouth and spoke. Carter. In Danny's voice, I nearly dropped my rifle. Ryan Carter, it said again, head tilting. Help me, please. Don't listen, Mac hissed beside me. It's not him. But God help me. It sounded exactly like Danny. The accent, the tone, even the slight crack in his voice when he was scared. They hurt me, Ryan, the creature said, taking a step closer to the fence. I'm cold. I want to come home. Tears stung my eyes. My finger trembled on the trigger. The creature smiled. Not a human smile. Something wrong. Too wide. Too many teeth. Then it charged. Fire! Price screamed. The night exploded with gunfire. Muzzle flashes lit up the darkness as dozens of rifles opened up. The creature jerked, stumbled, but kept coming. It hit the fence at full speed, and the chain link shook like a live thing. More creatures surged forward. The fence groaned under their weight. Some climbed, others tore at the posts, and one massive figure simply grabbed the chain link and pulled, ripping a section free with a screech of metal. "Fall back!" Price roared. "Fall back to the main building!" We ran. All of us. Training forgotten. Discipline shattered. We ran like prey because that's what we were. I glanced back once and saw them pouring through the broken fence, moving on all fours now, faster than anything that size should move. One tackled a soldier who'd fallen behind. His scream cut short with a sickening crunch. We reached the main administration building and barricaded the doors. Windows shattered as something hurled rocks through them. The creatures circled outside, howling, calling to us in the voices of dead friends. "Basement," Price ordered, voice steady despite the chaos. "Everyone to the basement. Now." We descended into the concrete bunker beneath the building. 50 soldiers crammed into a space meant for 20. The door sealed with a heavy clang, and suddenly the howls were muted, distant. Price got on the emergency radio calling for extraction, for reinforcements, for anything. But the response was the same static we'd heard in the woods. "They're jamming us," Dr. Kimball said from the corner. She'd appeared sometime during the chaos, calm as ever. "Or the geology is. These mountains are full of iron deposits. Makes communication difficult." "So we're trapped," someone said. "We're secure," Price corrected. "This bunker was built to withstand a siege. We have supplies for 2 weeks. We wait them out." But as the hours dragged on, as we sat in that concrete tomb listening to things scrape and pound against the door above, I realized something terrible. They weren't trying to break in. They were waiting for us to come out. Day 1 in the bunker, we were soldiers, disciplined, organized, following orders. Price established watch rotations, rationed the supplies, kept everyone focused on survival protocols. Day 2, cracks started showing. The pounding above never stopped. Sometimes rhythmic, like they were testing the structure. Other times random, chaotic, designed to keep us on edge. And always the voices, calling out names, pleading, screaming, using the voices of the men we'd lost. By day 3, 2 soldiers had mental breaks. One had to be sedated after trying to open the bunker door, screaming that his brother was outside and needed help. The other just sat in the corner, rocking, whispering prayers that made no sense. We were 50 soldiers trapped in a concrete box, breathing recycled air, listening to monsters wear us down psychologically. And it was working. I sat against the wall, rifle across my lap, watching Mac clean his weapon for the 100th time. His hands moved, mechanical, automatic, but his eyes were distant. "You think anyone's coming?" I asked quietly. He didn't look up. "No." Dr. Kimball said the government knows about these things. They have to send help. "Kid," Mac said, finally meeting my eyes, "if the government's known about them for 60 years and kept it quiet, what makes you think they'll break that silence for us? We're expendable. This base is expendable. They'll wait until the creatures leave. Then they'll sanitize the site and call it a training accident." My stomach turned. "That's insane. That's classified operations." He went back to cleaning his rifle. "We're ghosts. We just don't know it yet." Colonel Price appeared from the command corner, clipboard in hand. His uniform was rumpled now, dark circles under his eyes. The man who'd stood granite solid 3 days ago looked like he was holding himself together with tape and willpower. "Listen up," he called out. The bunker went quiet. "We're on day 3. Supplies are holding. Water's good for another week. Food for 10 days if we stay rationed. Communications are still down. But Dr. Kimball believes the creatures will move on once they realize we're not coming out. And if they don't?" Someone called out. Price's jaw tightened. "Then we adapt." "Adapt how?" Another soldier demanded. "We can't stay down here forever. We stay down here as long as it takes," Price snapped. "That's an order." But his voice cracked on the last word, and everyone heard it. Dr. Kimball stood, moving to Price's side. Her calm was unsettling, like she'd seen this scenario play out before. "The creatures are testing our resolve," she said. "This is documented behavior. They'll maintain pressure for several days, then move on to easier prey. Our best option is patience." "Patience," someone muttered. "We're supposed to just sit here while those things—" A massive impact shook the bunker. Dust rained from the ceiling. Everyone froze. Then another impact. Harder. The lights flickered. "They're trying to break through," Max said, standing. Dr. Kimball shook her head. "The structure is solid. They can't." The ceiling groaned. Metal shrieked. And through the concrete we heard them. Not howling. Not calling. Digging. "They're going through the building," Price said, face draining of color. "They're digging down to us." Panic rippled through the bunker. Soldiers grabbed weapons, backing away from the ceiling as dust and small chunks of concrete began falling. "Everyone, calm down," Price shouted. But his voice was drowned out by the scraping, pounding, relentless assault from above. I watched the ceiling crack, a thin line splitting the concrete, spider-webbing outward, and I realized with cold certainty that Dr. Kimball was wrong. These things weren't animals following instinct. They were intelligent, patient, and they'd figured out that we were trapped. "We need to move," Max said, gripping my shoulder. "Now." "Move where?" I asked. "There's one way in and out. Then we go out." He looked at Price. "Sir, we need to evacuate before they dig through." Price stared at the cracking ceiling, and for the first time I saw fear in his eyes. Real primal fear. "Prepare for surface exit," he said quietly. Then louder, "Everyone, gear up. We're moving out." The bunker exploded into motion. Soldiers grabbing packs, checking weapons, forming up near the door. The scraping above grew louder, more frantic, like the creatures knew we were about to run. 2-by-2 formation," Price ordered. "We move fast to the motor pool. Trucks are fueled and ready. Anyone who can't keep up gets carried. No one gets left behind." The words hung hollow. We'd already left people behind. But no one said it. Mac checked his magazine one last time, then looked at me. "Stay close. Don't stop for anything. And if I go down, you keep running. Understand?" I wanted to argue, to say something brave. Instead, I just nodded. Price positioned himself at the door, hand on the release wheel. "On my mark. 3, 2, 1, go!" He spun the wheel and shoved the door open. We poured out into chaos. The administrative building was destroyed. Walls torn open, ceiling collapsed, furniture shredded, and everywhere claw marks, deep gouges in concrete and metal that shouldn't have been possible. But the creatures weren't inside. They were waiting outside. We burst through the main doors into pre-dawn darkness. The base was wrecked, buildings torn apart, vehicles overturned, fence completely demolished. And standing in formation across the compound, blocking our path to the motor pool, were at least 30 of them. They didn't move, just watched as we formed up. 50 armed soldiers facing down a wall of impossible predators. The largest one stepped forward, the same one from before, the one who'd mimicked Danny. It tilted its head, studying us with those two intelligent eyes. Then it spoke in Colonel Price's voice. "There's nowhere to run." Price raised his rifle, finger on the trigger. "Fire at will." The night lit up with muzzle flashes. Rounds tore into the creatures, and several went down, roaring in pain. But most just staggered, then kept coming. They were too big, too tough, and there were too many. "Motor pool," Price screamed. "Move!" We ran. The creatures charged, and the base became a war zone. I fired as I ran. Not aiming, just squeezing the trigger at anything that moved. A creature lunged from the side. Mac shot it point-blank in the face. It dropped, skull shattered, but another immediately took its place. Soldiers fell. I heard screams, wet tearing sounds, bones snapping. Someone grabbed my arm, trying to pull me back. I spun, saw a private I didn't know, eyes wide with terror. Then a massive hand closed around his head and jerked him backward. I didn't see what happened next. Didn't want to. The motor pool was 50 meters away. Might as well have been 50 miles. Creatures closed in from every side. We were being herded, corralled, picked off one by one. Price went down hard, tackled by 2 of them. He fired his sidearm until the slide locked back. Then they dragged him into the shadows. His screams cut off abruptly. Dr. Kimball ran beside me, somehow keeping pace despite being twice my age. Her briefcase was gone, replaced with a pistol she fired with surprising accuracy. "The caves!" she shouted over the gunfire. "North Ridge. There's a cave system. They won't follow us into." "How do you know?" I yelled back. "Because that's where they live." A creature stepped into our path. Mac shot it 3 times. It staggered but stayed up. I shot it twice more. It dropped. We reached the motor pool. Half the trucks were destroyed, but 3 were intact. Mac kicked open the door of the nearest one, shoved me inside, and climbed into the driver's seat. Dr. Kimball jumped in back with 4 other soldiers I barely recognized. The engine roared to life. Mac slammed it into gear and floored the accelerator. The truck lurched forward, crashing through debris, aimed straight at the broken fence line. Creatures tried to block us. Mac didn't slow down. We hit one at full speed, felt the sickening thump of impact, kept going. Behind us, 2 more trucks followed, engines screaming. We burst through the fence and onto the forest road. Dawn was breaking, painting the sky bloody red. The truck fishtailed on loose gravel, but Mac held it steady, driving like a man possessed. I looked in the side mirror. Shapes poured out of the base, dozens of them giving chase on all 4s. Fast, impossibly fast. "They're gaining," one of the soldiers in back shouted. Mac cursed and pushed the accelerator to the floor. The truck shook, engine whining. Trees blurred past. The road curved sharp, and Mac barely made the turn. Behind us, one of the other trucks didn't. It flipped, rolled 3 times, came to rest on its roof. Creatures swarmed it immediately. "Don't stop," Dr. Kimball said. "Don't even slow down." We didn't. The chase lasted 20 minutes that felt like hours. The creatures finally fell back as we hit the main highway, disappearing into the forest like they'd never existed. We drove in silence. The only sound, the truck's struggling engine and our ragged breathing. Mac finally slowed as we approached a small town. Gas stations, diners, normal civilization. People going about their morning like the world hadn't just ended in the mountains above. He pulled into an empty parking lot and killed the engine. His hands shook as he gripped the wheel. I realized mine were shaking too. Everything was shaking. "How many made it out?" someone asked. I counted. 7 of us in our truck. We lost visual on the 3rd truck during the chase. 7 out of 50. Dr. Kimball pulled out a cell phone, dialed a number. Whoever answered, she spoke in clipped, professional tones. "This is Kimball. FOB Kettleman is lost. Request immediate containment and sanitization. Yes, I'm aware of the protocols. 7 survivors. I'll handle debriefing." She hung up and looked at us. "You'll be picked up within the hour. You'll be taken to a secure facility, questioned extensively, then released with NDAs and cover stories. You'll never speak of this again. Not to family. Not to friends. Not to anyone." "And if we do?" Mac asked, voice raw. Her expression didn't change. "Then you'll disappear, just like FOB Kettleman is about to." I wanted to argue, to fight, to do something, but I was so tired, so hollowed out. I just nodded. That was 3 years ago. They kept us in the facility for 6 weeks. Debriefings, psychological evaluations, medical exams. They told us we'd been part of a classified training exercise that went wrong. Equipment malfunction. Gas leak causing hallucinations. Standard cover-up procedure. They discharged us honorably, gave us clean service records with fake deployment histories, set us up with jobs and housing far from Appalachia. Made sure we understood that silence was the only option. I haven't seen Max since. Don't know if he's alive or if he broke the NDA and disappeared like Dr. Kimball promised. The other 5 survivors scattered to different states. We never try to contact each other. I live in Arizona now. Desert as far as the eye can see. No forests, no mountains, no places for things to hide. I chose it specifically, but it doesn't help. Because on quiet nights, when the wind blows just right, I hear it. That voice, Danny's voice, calling my name, asking me why I left him behind. I know it's not real. I know it's trauma, PTSD, my brain trying to process what happened. But knowing doesn't make it stop. And sometimes, just sometimes, I'll see something on the news. Hikers missing in the Pacific Northwest. Hunters vanishing in the Rockies. Construction crews finding impossible tracks in remote areas. Each time, I wonder if they're experiencing what we did. If they're fighting creatures that shouldn't exist, that the government knows about but refuses to acknowledge. The truth is simple and terrifying. Those things are real. They're out there, in the deep forests, in the remote mountains, in places humans don't go. They've been there for thousands of years. And they'll be there long after we're gone. The government won't tell you. They can't. Because if people knew, truly knew, what lives in those woods, nobody would ever go hiking again. National parks would empty. Tourism would collapse. And more than that, the fundamental belief that humans are apex predators, that we own this planet, would shatter. So they keep it quiet. They monitor. They contain. And when bases like Kettleman fall, they sanitize and move on. FOB Kettleman doesn't exist anymore. If you look at maps, you'll find nothing but wilderness. If you search military records, you'll find no mention of it. The soldiers who died there are listed as casualties in training exercises across different locations. Their families got flagged coffins filled with weights and lies. And the creatures? They're still there, still hunting, still watching, waiting for the next time someone wanders too deep, sees too much, gets too close to the truth. I was one of the lucky ones. I got out. I survived. But I'll never be free of those woods, of that base, of Danny's voice calling my name in the dark. If you ever find yourself in the Appalachian Mountains, deep in the backcountry where cell phones don't work and the trails disappear into fog, and you hear something moving in the trees, something too big, too heavy, too wrong, don't investigate. Don't call out. Don't try to rationalize it as a bear or a deer or your imagination. Just run. Run as fast as you can back to civilization. And pray they're not curious enough to follow. Because once they know you've seen them, once you become interesting to them, you're already part of their world. And their world doesn't let you leave. I still have nightmares every single night. I see Danny's face in that clearing. See the creatures tearing through the fence. See Colonel Price dragged into the shadows. I wake up screaming, drenched in sweat, checking every corner of my apartment for yellow eyes watching from the dark. My therapist says it's normal for combat veterans. She doesn't know I was never in combat. Not the kind the Army admits exists. A few months ago, I got a package. No return address. No note. Inside was a newspaper clipping from a Virginia local paper. Small story buried on page 6. Mysterious equipment malfunction causes evacuation of remote research station. The article mentioned FOB Kettleman by name. Said it was being permanently decommissioned due to structural concerns and environmental hazards. The photo showed bulldozers tearing down buildings. Crews in hazmat suits clearing debris. Sanitization. Just like Dr. Kimball promised. But what caught my attention was the second article clipped to the back. Even smaller. Just 3 paragraphs. Local hunters report unusual animal activity. It described increased sightings of large, unidentified animals in the mountains north of the former base. Livestock going missing. Strange calls in the night. Massive tracks found near hiking trails. The creatures were spreading. Expanding their territory now that the base was gone. Now that there was no one watching. No one containing them. I called the number at the bottom of the article. A ranger station. The woman who answered sounded tired. Frustrated. Are the reports true? I asked. About the animals? Look, she sighed. We've had some unusual activity. But it's probably just bears. People see what they want to see, you know? Gets dark in those woods. Imagination runs wild. What if it's not imagination? I pressed. What if something's actually out there? A long pause. Then quieter. If something's out there, buddy, it's been there a lot longer than we have. Best thing people can do is stay on marked trails and don't go poking around where they don't belong. She hung up. I stared at the articles for hours. Part of me wanted to call Dr. Kimball's number, the emergency contact they'd given us, warn someone, tell them the situation was escalating. But I didn't, because deep down I knew they already knew. They've always known. And they've decided that acceptable losses are better than mass panic. So here I am, living in the desert, working a desk job, pretending to be normal. But every time I see a forest on TV, every time I hear someone planning a camping trip to Appalachia, I want to scream at them to stay away. Can't, of course. I signed the papers, took the money, agreed to stay silent. But I can tell you this, those mountains are not empty. The wilderness is not unpopulated. And the next time you're hiking through deep woods and feel like you're being watched, trust that instinct. Because you are. They're in the trees, in the shadows, just beyond your peripheral vision. Studying you, learning your voice, deciding whether you're worth the effort of hunting. Most people never see them. They're good at hiding when they want to be. But every year, hundreds of people vanish in national parks and forests. Most are found eventually, dead from exposure or accidents. But some are never found. No trace, no evidence. Like they walked into the woods and ceased to exist. Those are the ones who got too close, who saw too much, who became prey. Danny Flores was 27 when he disappeared. He had a fiancée back home, a kid sister, parents who thought he died in a training exercise. They never got the truth. Never got closure. Just a coffin and a flag and lies. He's still out there somewhere in those mountains, or what's left of him, along with Colonel Price and Torres and Ruiz and 43 other soldiers whose names I'll never forget. We were supposed to be the protectors, the ones who stood between civilians and danger. But we learned the hard way that some dangers are too old, too powerful, too deeply rooted for us to fight. The best we can do is avoid them, respect their territory, and hope they respect ours. But that hope gets thinner every year. As humans expand deeper into wilderness, as we build and develop and claim more land, we're pushing into their world. And they're pushing back. One day, maybe soon, there'll be an incident too big to cover up. Too many witnesses, too much evidence, too much blood, and the truth will come out. When that day comes, when you see the news reports and the shaky footage and the government denials, remember this story. Remember F.O.B. Kettleman. Remember the soldiers who died trying to hold a line against something that shouldn't exist. And remember that we tried to warn you. The woods are not safe. They never were. We just convinced ourselves they were because the alternative was too terrifying to accept. I'm telling you this because someone needs to know. Someone needs to carry the story forward. Not for glory or attention, but as a warning. Stay out of the deep woods. Stay on marked trails. And if you hear your name called from the darkness in a voice that sounds like someone you know, do not answer. Because it's not them. It's never them. It's something older. Something that learned long ago that the best way to hunt humans is to sound human. And once it has your attention, once you step toward that voice, you're already gone. I survived Appalachia, but I'll never escape it. Those mountains are in my blood now, in my nightmares, in every shadow that moves wrong. So when people ask me about my military service, I smile and say it was uneventful. Desk work, mostly. Nothing exciting. And I live with the weight of that lie because the truth would destroy them. Just like it destroyed me. The creatures are real. The government knows. And we're all just hoping they stay in their territory long enough for it not to matter. But hope isn't a strategy. And their territory is shrinking every day. One day, they'll have nowhere left to hide. And when that happens, when they're forced into populated areas, when they have no choice but to be seen, God help us all. Until then, I sit in my desert apartment, far from any forest, and I wait for the nightmares to stop, for Danny's voice to fade, for some kind of peace that I know will never come. Because once you've looked into those yellow eyes, once you've heard that perfect mimicry of human speech coming from something that definitely isn't human, you're changed forever. You're marked, tagged, remembered, and deep in the Appalachian Mountains, in caves and valleys no human has mapped, they remember too. They remember every soldier who escaped, every witness who survived, every person who saw them and lived to tell about it. And someday they might come looking. That's why I don't sleep well anymore. That's why I keep a loaded rifle by my bed, even though I know it wouldn't matter. That's why I'll never go camping again. Never hike through forests. Never trust the wilderness. Because I know what's out there. What's always been out there. Waiting. Watching. Learning. And I know that we didn't win that night. We just got lucky enough to run. The war is still going on in mountains and forests across the country, between armed soldiers and creatures that shouldn't exist. A secret war fought in shadows, covered up by bureaucrats, denied by officials. But it's real. As real as the scars on my body and the holes in my memory where I've blocked out the worst parts. So take this as your warning from someone who knows, someone who was there. The deep woods are not your friend. They never were. And the things that live there are done sharing. Stay in the light. Stay in civilization. And if you ever hear something calling your name from the darkness, pretend you didn't hear it. Because answering means you're already dead. You just don't know it yet. I learned that lesson in the mountains of Appalachia. And I paid for it with my sanity, my sleep, and the ghosts of 43 brothers in arms who didn't make it out. Don't make the same mistake. The woods are watching, always watching, and they never forget.